Greetings from New York City and Columbia Business School Executive Education. My name is Scott Gardner, and I'm very happy to be here today with Adam Royalty for today's webinar, Driving Innovation Through Design Thinking. Before I introduce Adam, as always, I'd like to go over a few quick logistics for the webinar. A recording will be made available of this webinar. If you'd like to tweet about the webinar, please use hashtag CBSExecEd. And as always, we encourage you to upload your questions into the Q&A box throughout the webinar. Today will be a little bit different. We will have 30 minutes of interactive content, and we'll get to your questions in our The Conversation Continues section. Both will be sent to you following the main webinar. If you're on webinar live, please use the Q&A box, and if you're viewing us through Facebook, please use the comment box. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure today to introduce Adam Royalty. He is the designer in residence at Columbia Entrepreneurship, Innovation, and Design, and is the founding director of Columbia Entrepreneurship Design Studio. He co-teaches the courses Launching New Ventures and Greenhouse at Columbia Business School, and a course on social entrepreneurships at the School of International and Public Affairs. Through the Design Studio, Adam helps entrepreneurs to use the methods and mindsets of design thinking to understand problems more deeply and solve them in innovative ways. Adam, it's great to be with you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and thank you everyone for joining.
Great. So let's get started, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Design thinking. Design is a very broad term. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. So I think the first thing we must do is narrow that down. What is design?
Yeah, so design, the way we like to think about it at the Design Studio is how do you approach problems? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I like to illustrate that through a couple of images. So the first image, and I share this a lot, is this example of a chair and a piece of technology. So a lot of times when people think of design, they're saying, oh, tell me about the furniture. What kind of radical new piece are you creating? And although I consider that a type of design, that's not exactly what we do at the Design Studio. And people will kind of move on and say, oh, Apple technology, there's a lot of people doing really great design. Is that kind of stuff you do? They'll say things like UX, UI, throw around terms like that. Right. And I like a lot of the industrial design that tech companies do. But when I think about design and design thinking, it's really about how do you solve problems the way that a designer might.
Right.
And so designers have been solving problems in a certain way for a long, long time. And I like to illustrate that by looking at just a big garbled mess, right? So designers take problems that are oftentimes ill-defined. The solution isn't prescribed. You're not exactly sure what direction to even start in. But they have a process they go through to figure out what's a viable, what's a powerful solution. And I think over the last 20 or 30 years, people have started to say, hey, there are a lot of problems like this in the world, especially in entrepreneurship. I have an idea for a startup, but that idea is going to change, week one, week two. It's a messy problem. The same is true for innovation in large organizations. Like, it isn't necessarily clear what the answer is. If we knew what the answer was, we would just execute on it. So we say, how do we use design to go from a messy problem to getting some clarity, to get some ideas? Right. And so the way that we do that is by using, we talk about a design process. Here's the process that we use at the studio. So it's a 4-step process. It starts with explore. So it's really about understanding the problem more deeply. And then we go there from explore to reframe. Because so often, once we explore the problem, we decide, actually, the problem that I set out to solve, that might not be the best problem to solve. That might not be the most meaningful problem. So we dedicate time in our process to actually change what we're solving. And then once we have a new frame, we generate ideas, and then we prototype. So we build out solutions. And really the idea is, it's not like 4 steps and then you're done. But it's like, how do you cycle through this? And as you become more familiar with design, you don't always have to go through in 4 steps. You might say, let's actually just spend some time reframing. It's a lot more of a fluid process once you really get into it.
Well, I like this because when I look at the explore, it's identifying a problem, right? It's identifying an issue. Moving into the reframing is sort of looking at it in that positive way, like, what's the opportunity?
Yeah.
So it's sort of is it a shift of mindset also?
Yeah, so that's a great point. And when you talk about mindset, it's looking for opportunities, but it's also can be quite difficult because for people, in business and organizations, you're there to solve problems. And once you've identified a problem, it's like, I want to get that solution quickly.
Right.
It can be so uncomfortable to sit in the ambiguity of, I don't know the solution, but I
Right.
know the problem.
Right.
But in design, that's really important
Right.
because you want to understand, like, what is the problem I want to solve, and spend a little bit of time there, which is why that reframe is so
And
important.
it's a culture shift for an organization. Because I think maybe a lot of, when I look at Explore, that's where they live.
Yeah.
In exploring, identifying problems, no solutions, no changing mindsets. I mean, we're trying to solve problems, but also, to me, the culture of a company is
Yeah.
very important to have that shift.
And I think later on we'll see some examples of how leaders have gone about doing a little micro shifts in culture to enable this creative way of working.
Yeah, and it creates autonomy, it creates, entrepreneur. I mean, it just creates,
Yeah.
opens up a world for the employees of a company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, super. So now, we are on the same page when it comes to what design is. We're not talking about like just designing a new chair. You're talking about more of a mindset, a way of going about things and solving problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Who can use design?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. They say, wait, isn't design meant for the designers? Or, my service isn't about making things look beautiful. So, what is design useful for me? Or, I work in pharmaceutical. Like, why should I use design? So the one thing that we want to mention about design and the way we teach it is extremely human-centered. So if you are working on a problem that involves people, so customers, if you have customers that are people, if you're working on internal problems, there are stakeholders, B2B, B2C, wherever people are involved and important for you to move forward, design can play a role. Because it's really about understanding what people need and how do you make decisions based off of understanding those needs. And what we find leaders to be really successful is when they marry this idea of design, understanding needs with their other skill sets.
I think this is enormously important because I do feel that when you talk about the design studio, when you talk about design, that it immediately shuts off many industries who feel that, oh, well, we're not in the theater, we're not we don't build furniture, we don't, and it really, that's not what you're like. If you could just reiterate, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about any business can use this function.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Because businesses revolve around people for the most part. And I would say, to be even a little bit more nuanced, I think a lot of organizations are beginning to invest specifically in design, like whether it be hiring designers or training people in doing design thinking. And we've seen this shift from designers like literally being in the back of the house or in another building, and you send them an idea and they make it look nice and they send it back. Well, a lot of organizations are realizing designers can do a lot more, and design as a field is really about understanding customers and finding, what you said earlier, new opportunities. And so let's say you're at a company that actually is making investments in design, and you're not a designer, that's okay, but design is becoming more central to what you're doing. Being able to speak the language and understanding like the work that designers do. So when designers share a prototype with you, or they share, a series of needs, like being able to understand what that means, it raises your ability to lead. So that's an example of companies that invest in design more explicitly. On the flip side, there are a lot of organizations that want to use design, or individual leaders out there who said, like, gosh, we've seen this a lot. I feel like I've lost touch with my customers. I don't sense their needs as much. Like I want that more involved with in our day-to-day work. And similar is like, we feel like we're just not moving quick enough. There's a lot of startups out there, there's a lot of people who feel like they're moving fast. Design is a way you can move fast. So whether you're a company that's made an explicit investment in design, or whether you want to just bring the customer insights more closely to your decision making, like design can play a role. And understanding design, kind of understanding the vocabulary, getting fluent and trying the practices is beneficial. So that's what
it. So design connects you to your customers and helps you respond quickly. Which is what business should be. Right? Exactly. All right, so let me ask you, can you illustrate what you mean by this? Give an example for us.
Yeah, so one of my favorite, it's a little exercise, and so this is where the interactivity comes in. So I'm gonna put an image here, and it's one of my favorite things to do. We do this in the studio all the time. So this is the part where you at home get to play along. So here's an image of a girl, in a library or study, and you can see she's reaching up for a book. So what I want to know from everyone out there listening, I want you to share, what does she need, right? So just think about this image. You don't need to know the backstory. I don't know the backstory, but just generate, like, what does she need?
And to answer this question, if you can use the chat box, which will be fed to us live here in the studio. So want to kind of prompt a little bit more of what they want to look at here?
We're going to be looking at your chats coming in. Again, there's no right answer. We're trying to get a range. We're trying to see what the community out there says. So definitely, like, what does she need? Thinking about this image, it could be anything. One word, a sentence. Right. Send it in.
All right. What are we seeing coming in here?
Yeah. So a couple things. So one of the things we see a lot coming in first thing is like a ladder. Okay, she needs a ladder. I'm not going to argue with that. What else are we getting? So. Yep. So like a book, great. Yeah, she's reaching for a book. She needs a book. There we go. I like going for
a lot of people are saying book.
Book, right? Book. So information, which is we get that a lot too. Like a little bit more abstractly. Right. I see shoes. Yep. Someone's astute there. Maybe she needs some shoes. I like a creative group. Supervision. Maybe like where is this safe? What's happening here? Some more ladders. Okay. Any last one? So. We're going to ask we'll do a round 2. So these are great, right? So we've got a Kindle. Okay, a Kindle. Maybe she needs a Kindle. So this is great. So all these things I would say that make sense. I'm gonna go to a ladder because it was the first thing that I noticed and one that we often like seeing. Mm-hmm. So you could say she needs a ladder, right? And that helps her get to that book. But if you say she needs a ladder, you kind of like, that's the path you're going to go on. It's like you sort of defined a solution.
Right.
And it might be a blue ladder, it might be a polka dot ladder, it might lean or be an A-frame, but you're set on a ladder, and you can get off it, but you're kind of on that path. So it's a little flip, it's a little trick, but all the things that were mentioned were nouns, were things. Information, a Kindle, exactly. Even shoes, all things, which is kind of how we're used to thinking about needs. Right. So this time, what I want you to do at home is I want you to phrase the needs as verbs. So think about, this girl needs to blank. What does she need to do?
Think about it as a verb, as action, right? And keep uploading those comments and questions or the answers to that into the chat box, please. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, so as they come in, you can think about some of the things that were already mentioned, like a ladder, like how do you turn that into a verb? Okay. So like one of the things we see, like to reach. Okay, so to reach, to grow, so you can, to ask for help. So like that's a twist on the supervision, right? Supervision to ask for help.
Right.
I like that. To explore. Okay. Like that's it. Like to explore is interesting because they may be moving away from notion of just going for the book, like to get the book down. Right. This one to show off. So I think like to show off, like almost like to show what you can do. Right.
Independence.
Yeah. To illustrate independence, to show, to show your parents that your brother isn't the know-it-all, like, whatever it is. So I want to go back again to reach, right? So these are great. So great job.
Thank you.
When you think about she needs to reach, so that's different because you don't have a prescribed solution. It could be a ladder. It could be an extendable arm. It could be a grappling hook. It could be all these different things. And I realize this example is fun and sort of different, but when you phrase needs as verbs, you keep your innovation potential open and you haven't decided on a solution. So then you can decide what is the best way to help her reach, and you can come up with multiple ideas and test. I also like the idea to grow. Like what does that mean? Is that to grow taller, or is that maybe she needs to grow her knowledge? Like it's a little bit less clear, but there's a lot of really interesting directions you can go into. Right. So I appreciate this exercise because it's just a simple picture, but it helps people reframe a little bit, like what a need really is and kind of the power it can have when you think about them just simply as verbs.
And it gives action to people who are being led, right? Mm-hmm. So it gives a leader a way of saying something in an actionable way, not just we need to do, whatever, we need to have this.
Well,
we need to have this result. It's really the process that ends with the result, right?
Which is really great. I love how you're phrasing that because it's actionable, but at the same time not prescriptive.
No.
Right, so it's not saying we need to execute, and there are times we need to execute this thing, but it's like it's actionable, like we need to help her grow. let's think about the ideas that will help her grow.
Right.
And you've also, you mentioned the process. You've also kind of defined what does the end state look like? Has she grown like that? That's what you can test against as you move forward.
Right.
So that's why this is such an important part, because it makes it actionable. It gives you a direction, but also helps you understand, what am I working towards, and have I solved it or not?
So yeah, it's not giving the map to people, it's giving them just a different way of looking at the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Which could be represents kind of a shift in how you might normally solve problems.
Great. Okay, so we worked together before, like many of the professors who are on these webinars with me. I've sat with you. We've talked a lot. I've been to the design studio, and one of the things I've heard you speak about are core concepts.
Yeah.
And I think this is very important to the people that are watching right now. Is what are these core concepts, and can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the two core concepts that I really want to express today, and we'll give examples of how each one shows up in an organization, is this idea of connecting with customers and responding to customers. And I don't want to say like these are, this is groundbreaking, no one's ever thought about connecting with customers, but doing it in this human-centered way, I think is a little bit different, and doing it consistently. So we were talking before, like, no one's going to argue that you shouldn't connect with customers or that you shouldn't respond to customers. People might say, well, you're not doing everything customers say, which is fine. We're not literally doing what they say, but like bringing them into part of your process so that you as a leader can make better decision making, better decisions. This is what it's about.
Okay, super. All right, do you have a few examples?
Yes. So the first one that I'll share, I'll give the example and I'll show the image that the person took. So it was a former student of mine. So she's an executive in a large firm, and they do a lot of work around security. I mean, big things like terrorism and international security.
Where every decision has huge implications.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And it's very much sort of in real world around sort of protecting people and events and venues. And they said, well, we have so much information. We're really good at this. But we want to launch a digital service. So can we help organizations have security kind of in a digital way? But it was so new, they didn't really know where to start, right? So they had a number of different like meetings, and kind of as one of those things where days turned into weeks, weeks turned into a couple of months, without really having a clear direction. Okay. And part of what they got stuck on is they just really did not know how to translate their knowledge into like a digital product or a digital service. And they didn't understand what the customers would be interested in. Right. And so one of the students who went through a program was versed in design thinking, not a designer, but someone who could use these mentalities. These methods and mindsets, she said, I want to take action. She said, I want to be actionable. And so she literally took materials around her. So she found some butcher paper, she found some Post-its, and what she did is she created a little prototype. And I want to show you that, literally what she made right now. And so what you're looking at here is a prototype. It's very rough, right? It's not a PowerPoint, it's not polished. And on the left side it says content. So that's different security content that they could provide. So cybercrime, terrorism, fraud. They even had a blank space for enter one in. Right. So on the left is content. On the right is format. Online portal apps. Like how do you digest content? And so what she did is she just used her network, and she found people like in organizations who care about security and who are on have the power to make decisions in terms of like buying software and whatnot. And so she met with them, not in a boardroom. She didn't do a presentation, but she just brought that with them. And she said, okay, if there are 3 pieces of content that are most important to you, what are they? And she made them, vote. Right. And what 2 pieces of format, like what of these format, does your organization connect with? Right. And so she talked, to a couple dozen people just within her network. And it wasn't like, oh, the top vote getters win, that's what we're going to do. But she would have people essentially share what they're excited about, and then talk to them, kind of interview them to learn more. Like, why is this important for your company? And then so she did these interviews all really quickly, and this is like 20, 30 minutes. She brought that back to the rest of the team and said, like, look, here's where we're getting the traction. These are the 3 pieces of content that people are really excited about. Here are the 2 most promising formats. Let's move from there. And so what she did is she transformed this kind of strategic discussion that was removed from customers. It was just in their own space to like something actionable. Right. And the last thing I will point out, which I think is really interesting, I mentioned it being rough.
There's a key point you just said. that they were having strategic discussions that were removed from their customer base.
Yeah.
And how many companies do we see doing that? And again, I've said this in other webinars, at a time when there's really no excuse for that, because we have very easy access to our customers. So I think that's an important point, that she's shifting the way they're making decisions.
And people forget that. You get into your day-to-day, and the customers all around you, but they're like, well, how do we build in that time? We have so many different things to do. I mean, this was so quick. It was done so quickly, and you can see it. Had she done this a month earlier, think about how much money and time that would have saved.
Right.
But so that's exactly what it is. Like, she went out to the customers and got some feedback, and as a team, they were making decisions based off of what they learned.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was thinking about, because people might be saying, well, I can't go to clients and show them, butcher paper and Post-its. And I totally, agree, depending on the context. If you're going into a big meeting and there's a boardroom and everyone has their exact place to sit, like, yeah, you probably want to speak to the culture, have a presentation. Right. But that's why, she intentionally met people at coffee shops. She wanted honest opinion. She didn't want any sort of political baggage to block what customers were saying, potential customers. Right. She wanted to really connect with people. And again, this is B2B. So she met with one or two people at a time in an informal setting to try to understand more about the insights. Right. So as they evolve, they'll have they work towards a product that they can share in different settings.
Sounds like she's getting very careful and consistent buy-in.
Yeah.
And then it starts to grow. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like what she's growing is that evidence of why we're making decisions and where this comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. All right. So do you have another example you'd like to show us?
So if that was connecting with customers, I want to give another example about responding.
So that's the first core value, connect with your customers. And this is a different way of doing it.
Exactly. So she went out and connected. The next one is how do you respond, which is kind of the other end of the other side of the coin there.
So core number 2 is respond to customers at this point.
So I really appreciate this example because there's a picture I took. I was invited into their space. This is from a large biotech company, and this part of the company really focuses on diabetes treatment. Okay. So really around type 2. So helping people monitor blood sugar, and so they have devices to help do that, and they're great at that. They have a lot of market share. Right. So they're very successful. But the senior vice president of the R&D group, he said, we want to not just make devices to help people manage type 2, but we want to say, how do we move into the space of pre-diabetes, right? So these are people who are on pace. If they don't change lifestyle, they don't change habits, they're very likely to develop type 2 diabetes. And in some ways, it's cannibalizing their own business. But in other ways, it's a bigger market. It's also, for them, they feel like this is the right thing to do. Like, how can we move into prevention? Right. But that's a little bit of a shift from what they're really good at, right? They're really good at these products. They do understand customers to some extent. But they're saying, like, well, now we might not be making a product, we might be making a service. And to the senior vice president's credit, he was very open to what the solutions could be. And so he started, he didn't change everything in R&D all at once, but he took a few teams of primarily engineers and added some people who were a little bit more human factors, like understanding more about people, some business leads, and created a few teams that were a little bit more interdisciplinary and said, we want to use design as a principle and use this notion of building out ideas. And so they made a lot of kind of like what you just saw in the previous example, these rough prototypes for people to try out. Nothing that they're going to put in the market. They're so far from thinking about market. These are things that are just, let's test it with 3 or 4 people. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that they found was an issue is the teams were coming up with really cool prototypes and examples, but they weren't necessarily going out and testing with people. Like it kind of just wasn't part of the culture. Right. So like that, in the previous example, that woman, she said, I'm going to go out, I'm going to test. Right. It was a little bit tricky for the teams. They didn't have that as their culture. Like where were they going to go? Right. So what the leader did, the SVP, what he did is he found through their agency, he found 10 or 20 people that were sort of diagnosed with being pre-diabetic. And he had them come in like once a week. So to say on Thursday, you're going to have 10 to 15 people coming into your company. And so these teams have to be ready to test with them. Right. So it's like, okay, we know that in a week, at 11 a.m., people are coming in. I need to evolve my idea to the next level and test it with them. And so what that forces you to do is develop multiple cycles of a product. Again, at a very early stage, but after a month, instead of kind of just thinking about the product, they've gone through a ton of testing. They've tested with essentially 40 to 50 people and got a lot of information, which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then one thing, which is one of my favorite parts of that story, is so that was kind of just for these few teams. Some people, not even in R&D, but in another part of the organization, have got wind of that, and they said, well, can we talk to customers? Like, we want to share some stuff. And so now there's like a bi-monthly customer lunch, where so this notion of bringing your customers in continues. And so anyone from the company can now come in and like interact and bring things to show the customers.
It's interesting that a company would ever, would even ever ask, can I talk to my customers?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that is absolutely a culture shift.
Yeah.
And so, really quickly, and then we'll get to some key takeaways.
Yeah.
My question would be, when you're saying this could work for any company, design thinking can work for any company.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're going into it with that, you have to think about analyzing the audience you're playing. Industries are different, and industries have different realities. So, it's design thinking holistic in its approach, or one way is the only way?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and you're right. It totally depends on the context. So what I think is nice is as you start to explore design, on the basic level, there's a lot of different methods you can use, right? So some methods might make more sense if you're trying to create an experience. Some methods might make more sense if you're trying to create a product. But the mindset of understanding needs, like that's relevant anywhere, because you're trying to understand like what are the needs and how do I solve them. This idea of building quickly and testing things out. I don't want to say it's relevant everywhere, because you don't want to be trying out new ideas as you're finalizing a building, building construction. But at early stages, it makes a lot of sense. So there's definitely, another way to say it is, I've not come across an industry and organization where you can't apply these principles. But to your point, sometimes you have to respond to the realities. So in this example, there's a lot of privacy concerns, especially in biomedical. There's a lot of rules about what you can test and how you can, what things you can test on whom. And so for them, they said, well, they had to figure out like what are the types of experiences that we can test and share given our company's norms, and things that we don't need, permission from the health organizations and whatnot to do it. So they had to figure that out, but once they kind of establish those ground rules, then they can go and iterate and practice design.
But those core values of connect with the customers, respond to the customers, still the core values. So you have a firm foundation, but you have to be, have to think about what the reality of your company is.
I have to be a little creative in that.
Great. Well, we have a couple minutes left, and this has been a lot of great information. What are some takeaways you could leave us with?
Yeah, so I think, we talk about needs, people, human-centered. I think it's important as you're exploring, how do I want to use design thinking? One way to do is just to map out who are the people that I interact with, not just customers, but stakeholders. It could be even internally, like how do we work better together as an organization? But who are all the people relevant to me in doing the job that I need to do? Who are all the people relevant to the team and doing the job that this team needs to do? And just getting a sense of their needs. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is being aware of, gosh, when you do design work, the data you get might look a little different than the data you are used to, right? So you might be used to specific marketing data or specific, like trial data. It might feel very quantitative. Doesn't have to. But what do you do with 20 interviews and a list of needs and the 12 needs the need that pops out the most, right? So a way to think about that is collecting needs and trying to isolate the 2 or 3 biggest needs that you might be facing, because that can be something that can inspire a team, but also you can design against. So I'll kind of finish that thought with this notion of when people are going to a solution, you can ask yourself, how confident am I that I'm addressing the needs of my customers? And where does that confidence come from? And I think design is really good at getting to the heart of that confidence, really understanding where those needs come from.
Great. Well, this has been wonderful. It's great to work with you today. A lot of good information. As I said at the beginning, we will be taking your questions that you've sent in, at our section called The Conversation Continues. So both the live webinar and The Conversation Continues will be emailed to you after the webinar. Thank you very much for joining us, and for those of you who joined us on Facebook, thank you very much for joining us. Adam, it was great to be with you today.
Thank you. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Bye.